Oliver, skeptical in his youth, underwent a liver transplant. For a while, he lived a normal life, but years later, he began to feel unwell. This discomfort led him to the point of experiencing a near-death experience, the famous NDE. Quickly, he was taken to a place that closely resembled Earth, though with subtle differences that made it clear it was not the place we live. But the most incredible part came afterward, upon his return. During the passage, he accessed a consciousness that answered his doubts in real time. This gave him some answers about what that place was and where he was. Hello, I'm Marcus, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here at Beyond the Life We Live. I hope you feel at home and absorb the lesson from this story that we are about to tell. By the way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as this is very important to us, helping us bring new and impactful stories to you. Oliver was a skeptical man. He only believed in what he could see and prove. As an engineer, his life revolved around facts and numbers. He never thought much about spiritual matters. But one day, everything changed. He discovered he had a severe liver problem, and the doctors were straightforward. Without a transplant, he would not survive. Although he didn't like the idea, Oliver agreed to get on the waiting list. Waiting for an organ wasn't easy. Oliver, who had always controlled his life, now depended on luck. He tried to live normally, but grew more anxious and sicker every day. One Sunday night, he felt a sharp pain. Rushed to the hospital, he received the news. There was a liver for him, and the transplant was going to happen. Everything happened quickly, and Oliver barely understood what was happening as he prepared for surgery. On the gurney, heading to the operating room, he thought for the first time about whether there was something beyond life. Before falling asleep under the anesthesia, he heard the sound of the hospital machines. Then everything went dark. And then, nothing more. With the transplant successful after the experience he had, he remembers thinking there was nothing beyond that darkness, which answered his question about life after death. However, what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning. After the transplant, Oliver tried to return to his normal life. At first, everything seemed fine. He went back to work, hung out with friends, and even started light sports. But something had changed, though he couldn't explain it. Sometimes, feeling strange things, Oliver ignored these signs for years, telling himself it was just the stress from the transplant and the medications. After all, he was a man of science and didn't believe in anything he couldn't explain. 5 years passed, and he continued with his routine, but always with that strange sensation. Oliver kept taking his medications and having regular checkups. However, one day during a normal lunch at work, he tasted blood in his mouth. He found it quite strange. The next day, the taste returned even stronger. Worried, he decided to go to the hospital, and after many exams, the doctors discovered he was having internal bleeding. Worse, the transplanted liver was failing. At that moment, Oliver realized his life was once again hanging by a thread. He found himself back at square one, needing another transplant. The thought of going through all that again terrified him. And automatically, he started thinking about all the strange things he'd felt over the past years. Were they warnings? Was there something more going on that he couldn't understand? Oliver didn't know it yet, but he was about to find answers to questions he didn't even know he had. While in the hospital, fighting against the internal bleeding, the doctors did everything to save him, but the situation was serious. Suddenly, Oliver began to feel himself losing consciousness, and that's when his NDE began. He no longer saw his body, but he felt as if he was being pulled somewhere above, seeing himself in a cloud, and then in a very dense fog. He felt a strange sensation, as if he were divided between two places. At that moment, something began pulling him with great force. According to him, this force was divided. From his shoulders up, it pulled him upward. From his waist down, something pulled him toward the ground. This sensation caused him great discomfort. Until the upward force won, and Oliver felt as if he had been freed from something heavy and dense, now lighter and free, with a peace he had never experienced before. After that, Oliver saw a bright light. When the light dimmed, he realized he was in a different place. It was a huge garden similar to a park inside a city. He deduced this by seeing large buildings in the background, and also noticed there were people everywhere in this park. The most amazing thing was the feeling Oliver had, the sensation that for the first time in his life he truly felt at home. It was as if he had returned from a long journey to a place that had always been his. Noticing that beyond this park there was a large city, he wanted to understand what this place was. But before he could do that, he heard a voice.
I understand that you wish to stay, but you cannot. You need to go back.
Confused, Oliver asked why.
You still have many things to resolve before you return.
Even though he didn't want to leave, after taking a few steps, he felt as if he were falling from a great height, and the good feeling from before simply vanished. Now he felt constricted, as if he were being forced back into the ground, something similar to what others have described in NDEs here on the channel when they return to Earth. However, after the fall, Oliver found himself in a different place. A cave with an opening of soft light, where on the other side he saw a landscape. But despite the shock, what caught his attention most at that moment was the strangeness of his knowledge, which seemed to have suddenly expanded. Oliver remained in this place for only a few minutes, enough time to realize he could ask questions and receive instant answers. It was like having access to all the knowledge of the universe. Curious, he asked about the place he had been before, the garden that resembled a park. The answer came clearly into his mind.
That was one of many paradises, the place where we come and return after life, where you reunite with everyone you have ever known, both here and there.
Curious, Oliver wanted to know more, asking who the people he had seen there were. The answer surprised him.
They were the souls of people who had already passed on, living in peace in that place.
Then Oliver asked the question that intrigued him the most.
And where was that so-called paradise?
Paradise, he discovered, was located in a neighboring universe to ours. Everything that exists here also exists there, but in a different way that we cannot understand while we are here. Oliver tried to ask more questions, but quickly felt himself being pulled toward the opening of light, and he felt himself disintegrating when everything went white, and he found himself back in the hospital, feeling his body again. After recovering from this experience, Oliver changed his outlook on life. He realized that we are more than just bodies, that there is something beyond what we can see and touch. And he understood that our life here is just a small part of something much bigger. Even without understanding everything, he returned determined to live in a different way, placing more value on the things that truly matter.